2013, we have come a long way. And now we describe heart failure according to ACC by 2013 criteria as reduced ejection fraction if it is less than 40%, as preserved ejection fraction if it is more than 50%, and if it is between 41 to 49, it is borderline preserved ejection fraction. This is the American criteria. And if you have a less than 40% ejection fraction, which later on improves to more than 40%, you call it as improved ejection fraction. Whereas 2016, the European guidelines mention reduced ejection fraction as less than 40 and preserved ejection fraction more than 50. And in between, they call this as mid-range reduced ejection fraction. So that is MRF. So this is how the different nomenclatures are. And in this January, August 2020, there is a new terminology added to all this, which is heart failure with recovered ejection fraction. Again, the same thing, which was improved ejection fraction in the American guidelines. Now they call it as heart failure with recovered ejection fraction. You see heart failure with preserved ejection fraction, you will see that almost half of the heart failure population is because of HFpEF. And the incidence is increasing as the aging process and the comorbid conditions increase. So by 2020, 65% of the heart failure patients would be preserved ejection fraction. We knew that heart failure with preserved ejection fraction has less mortality than with reduced. This was according to all the trials. But what happens is that the cascade goes down the hill once you have an admission for heart failure. So if HFpEF people have one admission for hospitalization, then the mortality and rehospitalization is the same as with reduced ejection fraction. So the key to all this treatment in one line would be to prevent the first hospitalization in those patients with HFpEF. So now the title is, what is the hope for the future? So this question only arises if there is no hope today. And why do they say so? The single one word which you would always remember with HFpEF is heterogeneity. There is heterogeneity in so-called nomenclature, which I showed you earlier. There is heterogeneity in the diagnostic challenges. There is heterogeneity in the etiologies and the management accordingly. So therefore, since there is heterogeneity everywhere, we don't have any standard protocol. And why do we call this that there is no hope just now? Is there is no treatment which has been convincingly shown to reduce morbidity or mortality in HFpEF patients. The only treatment which we have is to alleviate symptoms, improve well-being, manage comorbidities. This is what it is. So, and why this is so? This is so because all the earlier trials in HFpEF have not shown any reduction in mortality. Only few of them, like candesartan in CHARM preserved, showed decreased hospitalization. Perindopril show in PEF CHF, irbesartan preserve, and spironolactone in TOPCAT. They only showed. The reason behind this is that all these trials were with so-called HFpEF with EF more than 40%, not more than 55%. In CHARM preserved, only repeat hospitalizations had reduced, and that also was an investigator reported, not based on any laboratory investigation. In TOPCAT, there was differences in the results. In the East European countries, there was no benefit, whereas in the US, Canadian, there was benefit. Was there an inclusion problem, or was there any
We lost the connectivity.
I think
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, you
some.
Carry
Yeah,
on.
just a
Carry
second.
on.
I'll come back.
Yeah.
I'll come back. I hope.
Yes, Dr. Vijay Shah, we can go back to your presentation, sir. It is now we are seeing you clear.
Yeah, so I have to share my screen again. Yeah, one sec. It's coming, I believe. Uh, so can you see me here
Yeah,
again?
Yes,
yeah.
yes, yes.
please
Yeah,
go ahead.
thanks. So the ESC in 2016 again said that we don't have any specific, the only treatment we have is diuretics for symptom relief. And if there is some evidence where repeat hospitalizations have to be reduced, then candesartan, nebivolol can be tried. So basically, we don't have any specific treatment. The same thing in 2017, the American guidelines said that diuretics for symptom relief, and if there is ischemia, coronary vessel disease, you go for plasty or PCI. If there's atrial fibrillation, you treat that. And then if the patient is in sinus rhythm, and ARBs might be helpful in so-called those mid-range population, but there is no role of nitrates or any role of sildenafil or phosphodiesterase inhibitors. So they were not helpful. So now the international community recognized the fact that there is complexity in diagnosis, there is non-specificity of symptoms. And therefore, when you have such a scenario, people you take the help of diagnostic scores. So this is one diagnostic score based only on clinical parameters, that is H2FPEF score, where if you are obese, hypertensive, atrial fibrillation, pulmonary hypertension, elderly population, and if the filling pressures on Doppler echocardiography E to E prime is more than 9, so you have a score of 9. If the score is more than 5, then there is much likelihood of FPEF. Similarly, the Europeans had a score which is HFA PEF score. Here, this is based on echocardiography and biomarker calculations. There are major and minor criteria. Again, if it is more than or equal to 5, then their chances of FPEF are more. So in 2018, the European Society of Cardiology advocated a workup in this population. So the first initial workup is based on sign symptoms. If you have florid symptoms and raised BNP with normal ejection fraction, yes, which is standard echocardiography, this is HFpEF. If you don't have that, then you go for comprehensive echocardiography to find out E prime and longitudinal strain patterns and BNP levels. If that doesn't help you, you do an exercise stress echo and find out whether there is diastolic dysfunction, E or E prime again abnormal, or the wedge pressures are more on invasive hemodynamic monitoring. And finally, to find out the etiology, you do a cardiac MR, you do the SPECT images or the PET CT, genetic testing, and so on. So this is the basic workup. This is an example of HFpEF at rest on echo. You look at the LV mass index, the left atrium volume index. You look at the mitral EE prime more than 14. If at rest you get these parameters, it's fine. If not, you give them exercise and see whether again the EE prime is more than 14 or the TR velocity is more than 2.8. If not, you do invasive monitoring, check the LV and diastolic pressure or the pulmonary capillary wedge pressure at baseline. If they are high, then you are done. If not, then you give them exercise on the table, you give an ergometer cycling, and then do again, and then finally make the diagnosis. So this is the basic workup now, which is standardized. The role of GLS has been said earlier by Dr. Rakesh Gupta. So you can divide your population with those with abnormal GLS and those with normal or preserved GLS. Those with abnormal GLS are the ones you have myocardial contractile dysfunction and myocardial disease, myocardial fibrosis, scarring, and infiltrative like amyloid. We have discussed hemochromatosis and so on, sarcoid. So, and those with preserved will be having a compliance problem or a reserve problem where the left atrium will be enlarged and the pulmonary capillary pressures would be more. So you can again divide all this basically depending upon the etiology or the pathophysiology. And based upon that, you will have a separate subsection of FPEF population. For example, if you have all which are obese, you will see that obese with HFpEF have more mortality than non-obese with HFpEF. So this is one study population. What about, so here these are the various factors of obesity which give rise to diastolic dysfunction and a reduced LV compliance. And these are all the various mechanisms by which this HFpEF can be caused in an obese patient. So there could be various mechanisms, including the inflammatory biomarkers, including the nitric oxide pathway. Any study in Asian population. Here, if you see here, the comorbidity clusters in the Asian heart failure, especially India, if you see, we have young population, we have ischemic population. We do have the metabolic obese or the lean diabetic population or the elderly, but these are less as compared to the young and ischemic population. So there will be various subgroups of population of HFpEF, and therefore depending upon that subgroup, you have to tailor-made their treatment pattern. It is not that one size fits all or one medicine fits all the HFpEF population. So whenever you're looking at the treatment goals, you're looking at two things. One is to improve the health status, that is quality of life, symptoms, and the functional status. The other is to avoid the disease progression in terms of repeat hospitalization, in terms of decreased arrhythmias and sudden cardiac death, and in terms of decreased mortality. So this is a basic goal. And in acute, when the patient is admitted, your first goal is to decongest the patient. Give him diuretics, improve his symptom pattern, reduce this. And then how do you look at it? Reduce peripheral edema, reduce crepitations, clinical parameters, echocardiographic parameters, the hemoglobin should rise, the BNP level should decrease. And when in doubt, you can always look at the pulmonary capillary wedge pressure, invasive monitoring. But most important thing is to see that you give guideline directed therapy, and patient should not leave the hospital unless you have made a perfect diagnosis, unless you have given the proper treatment. And then the patient should go and follow up with a heart failure clinic, which will specially take care of these heart failure patients, so that to follow with their guideline directed therapy to reduce their mortality, improve quality of life, and give them exercise. This is the latest article in 2020 where exercise has shown to not only improve the quality of life and symptom status of the patient, but also the all-cause mortality and the cardiovascular mortality of the patient. So now there are other advances in the therapy, like we all know that patients of heart failure, those who are well controlled, suddenly go into acute heart failure. That is because of the sympathetic stimulation which has, and where the all the major organ blood is taken into the circulation and the patient goes in heart failure. So if you have implantable hemodynamic monitoring devices which can measure the PA pressure, and as soon as the PA pressure goes up, the patient takes diuretics and other medications and improves his medications. With that, you can reduce 50% hospitalization rate. So therefore, this acute heart failure hospitalizations will decrease with the help of hemodynamic monitoring. Now, diabetes and diabetic heart failure, Dr. Mahapatra alluded to various mechanisms of oxidative stress, inflammation, fibrosis, hypertension, impaired glucose tolerance. They have all been seen. But most important is if you have a HFpEF with diabetic with microvascular complications, retinopathy, nephropathy, and so on, including the cardiac microvascular dysfunction, the mortality is more, not only all cause, but cardiovascular. And this can be studied in the heart with the help of echo to find out the coronary flow reserve. If the coronary flow reserve is good, the microcirculation is good, the prognosis is better. But if the microcirculation is bad on the 2D echo itself, then the prognosis is bad. If not, you can do this on the cath lab table with the help of coronary flow reservoirs and find out whether there is microvascular dysfunction. And there is a trial on this. We showed that if you have the CMD, then the prognosis is bad. And drugs like trimetazidine, nicorandil, ranolazine could be useful in those patients. Now, lastly, SGLT2 inhibitors, we all know there is a separate talk on this, but SGLT2 has various mechanisms to improve diabetic heart failure, and therefore we are waiting for Emperor preserved trial outcomes with EMPA and DELIVER with DAPA. to see whether these patients may be benefited, HFpEF may be benefited with these drugs. The other incoming trials awaited are the use of vericiguat in the Vitality trial, the use of again ARNI, but this time not looking at mortality, but looking at quality of life and exercise capacity in the form of parallax trial. The spironolactone, which had failed in TopCat, will be reassessed in the SPIRIT trial. And lastly, the use of intraatrial shunt. So whenever the LA pressure is too huge, you want to reduce that pressure and transfer some of it to the RA, you can use the atrial flow dividers. And this is a study of PRELIM study which has shown that there could be benefit in such patients who don't get improvement with symptoms with all the guideline directed therapy, and there is improvement in symptoms as well as the pulmonary capillary wedge pressure decreases. So lastly, you can take help of this and then finally, we should vaccinate these patients of heart failure to see that they don't fall into diseases. Of course, pneumonia and other influenzas vaccines we have. We are waiting for this corona vaccine also, and maybe we will help these patients to have mortality because of these diseases. So my final slide, is there a hope for the future? Yes. Proper definition and diagnosis to be used using clinical parameters, echo parameters, biomarkers, and invasive monitoring whenever necessary. You should target comorbid conditions and specific etiologies and not clump all this together as lumpers. You should take the help of heart failure clinics and implement guideline. It is not only starting the therapy, maintaining the therapy, follow-up of the therapy is important. In certain situations, device monitoring and therapy like atrial flow dividers could be used. And we await the results of ongoing trials. And in future, we should design studies in specific groups like splitting all the subgroups and then taking one into population. Thank you very much.